have any questions at all, put your questions in the chat, and I am ready to get launched up. Right. So we're talking about this business credit journey. I want to specify what this is and what it isn't, and how this applies to you, and which aspects you might want to take advantage of for your own situation. I want everybody to be as informed as possible. I want everybody in my heart of hearts. I want you to be able to elevate yourself and push your family forward. Funding my future is like literally that's how that started. Is not only am I looking to get the funds to protect my future, but I'm protecting the future in the form of the next generation that comes after us. And I'm just going to start with this off the bat. Is that I have committed to donate and reinvest a portion of my profits from this into the next generation of entrepreneurs. So there will be a fund that will help them get into real estate, to get into business, get into financial literacy, to get into wealth building, so that we can change the generational wealth landscape, and to be able to help. And I think that is a win-win-win situation, to where we can help you to reach your goals, and we can also help the next generation to elevate. Right. So, and business credit is a critical thing to unlock, to be able to facilitate that. So this is why I am sharing this, sharing the details about how to do it. Again, this is a formula that you can access, and a lot of people are just not aware of what that formula is, and I want to make sure that you know what it is. Right. Hey, what's up, Lashonda? Good evening. Good to see you. So yeah, so I want to make sure you know what it is. Like, what is that blueprint? And I want to answer any questions that you have. Right. So, like, I'm not sure about how this works. Is this for me? I've heard about this angle, or you need to have this or that set up, or I put your questions in the chat so I can get that answered. Like I said, I've paid a good amount of money to get this info, and this is both on the client side, with me just learning about it, and then now since being able to help other people with it. So helping different clients and things like that, knowing different scenarios that work. And I am an open book. This is a no gatekeep night, as all of them are, where I want to be able to share with you, the tools that you can use to be able to leverage this. Again, this is a tool. It's a powerful tool. It's not the only trick in the book, but it is a powerful tool to be able to leverage. Hey, what's going on, Detroit? What's up, Da Jackson? What's going on? Good evening. Good evening. Good to see you guys on. So this is a powerful tool in your tool belt, right? To be able to fast track towards your wealth, fast track towards, just pushing things forward in your life. And I can't stress enough, like, how accessible and how important this strategy is. Because, like I said, it's not the only tool in the book, but it is one that you can get to so quickly. It's one that is very accessible to you. And I just want to break down the blueprint. Like, what is the formula? All right, so I'm going to just jump into that very, very quickly right now. If you do need assistance with this, I'm going to keep saying this throughout the night, but if you do need assistance with this, to look at your specific situation, right, to say, like, okay, what is my next step? I need you to go to fundingmyfuture.net and book a call with the team. It's a free consultation call, and you're going to get walked through, okay, what is my next step? Is that something with my credit that needs to be changed and adjusted? Or is there something with my LLC that needs to be changed and adjusted? Like, what is it specifically? And you're going to get that call and walk straight through. Right now, so let's talk about this. So I have been going over the requirements as I've been going live. Again, if you have any questions at all, please ask your question. But I do want to go through, let's talk about, like, how you can leverage this and why this can be so powerful, right? Especially when you're starting, like, from the jump. Detro, I appreciate you, appreciate the gifts and all the love, right? So when you this is going to be so powerful when you start from the jump with this, right? Because, like I said, if you have this formula in place, this takes a lot of the red tape out of the equation. A lot of things that block people's mind from feeling like, oh, I can access this, or I can't access this. This removes a lot of those blocks. And what are those blocks? Is things like, I need to be in business for a long time, right? I need to have bank statements and a certain amount of income in order to get this. Or I need a business credit score, like I need a Paydex score, and my Experian business score needs to be in a certain place, and all this different stuff. This removes all of that, right? Because we're talking about this is a no doc approach, right? No doc approach. That means that we don't have to submit tax returns. We don't have to submit personal financial statements. We don't have to submit bank statements, business plans, none of that, right? Now, it's smart for you to have that stuff, you know what I mean, to be able to manage it and leverage it. However, if you don't have to submit it, that changes the game completely, because what does that mean? Is that you could have a business that starts today and you have a plan for what you're about to do, but you don't have any, track record or anything like that. And what we're doing is we're leveraging our personal credit profile in a very specific way to be able to get into the door with these banks, right? And to push things forward. Lashonda says facts. Thank you. Yep. I appreciate it. Appreciate you. So let's keep pushing it forward, right? So let's look at the possibilities here, right? And what this looks like. So, like I said, if you have this formula together, some you watching here now could be sitting on 100K, 150K, right? 80K. And if you leverage a business partner or a spouse and some of these different angles and approaches and strategies that I have, you can kind of double up and triple up on that. Again, to where that could turn into now 200K to 300K to 400 to 500K. And like I said, between myself and my wife over the past 4 years, leveraging a strategy where we're using multiple LLCs and multiple guarantors, we've gotten over $500,000 in business credit in the form of 0% interest, business credit cards, again, all like no documents and things like that, that we've been able to leverage for mentorship groups, for, all sorts of things. And this is, again, what I feel like the reason this is so powerful is because anybody can access it once you know the information. And once you access it, if you use it properly and use it well, then that can be one of the biggest leapfrogs to your destination, is because it opens things up. Because how long does it take you to save up $100,000, right? How long will it take you to save up 120,000, to save up 80,000, even 50,000, right? Doesn't matter what type of budgeting you do, how far you skimp your dieting and your meals, and you eat beans and rice and things like that. It's gonna take a lot, right? And what we're saying is you could potentially have access to those funds and those amounts in 30 days, right? Now, case in point, one of my last clients, when she came through, from the time she booked a call with the team, again, fundingmyfuture.net, and this is a very straightforward process. But from the time she booked a call with the team to the time that she had 95,000 available in business credit that at 0% interest that she could use for her real estate business and ventures, was about 22 days, right? 22 days, just because she got the information, met with the advisor, execute, 22 days right there. So some of you literally could be, like I said, 30 days away from being on it, right? And what are those factors? This is what we're going to go through again tonight. But again, if you have any questions about that, I want you to interrupt me and put your question in the chat, right? So that I can get that answered for you, and let's clear up any cobwebs, clear up anything that you feel like, okay, this is this is a hesitation of mine. Like, what are the risk factors? Just anything that you have. So I'm going to go through some of those concepts for how we might leverage this, and then if somebody needs to know these factors, I'm going to loop back around to say, okay, well, what kind of credit profile do you need to actually build or make sure that you have in order to be qualified for this? Right now, again, the team can walk you through those steps and just give you, okay, this is where you currently are, your current snapshot. This is exactly what you need. Either you're totally ready and maybe you didn't know it, or you need like one or two things, or you need a lot of things, right? And I do want you to know that whoever you are watching now, you can access this and you don't have to wait, right? Because you can get the ball rolling at any time. So you're either in three categories. Either your credit is like fully ready, right? And you're ready to go and you're just moving on forward. Or number two, you have just a few tweaks to make to your profile that may be easier than you think, and you might be 30 days away from starting, right? Or 45 days or 15 days away from starting the process. Two, group three is, okay, I've got some, things on my credit, or I've got some negatives. I've got, all sorts of things on my credit that are an issue, and I need to fix it, or I need to repair, or I need to optimize it to be ready for funding, right? Now that might be You might be 90 days out, because a lot of our clients that need credit help are actually seeing results in the first 90 days. Right. So that might mean you're 90 days out from at least starting the process. Right. Again, that can fluctuate. There's no guarantees in credit repair. However, for a lot of our clients, that's what those results have been. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. It depends. Right. But just looking at that, so okay, if I start now, I can set myself up for success in the future. Right. Now, I said 3, but here's the group 4. Group 4 is you don't have any credit at all. Right. You've been leveraging cash, like you don't have any cards, you never got mortgages, just like maybe that's just how you were raised, like we're just using cash, right? So you might be in a position where you're going to have to build up your profile according to very specific instruction and guidance, ideally, so you're not having to just wander throughout there and get things wrong and waste time. But that might take a year for you to get the right accounts in your profile, to get the right high limit credit cards. We're going to talk about credit cards and how important those are to be able to have on your personal profile. And you might be a year out, right, from seasoning that up and making sure you're ready, and then you're good to go for funding, right? But either way, like I always say, tell me that I am lying, that this year has not flown by and you didn't blink and you could have swore that it was January of 2025 and now we're heading into December in a few days, right? So that the time is going to fly by. So if you just start now and positioning yourself, this can be, again, an incredibly powerful tool for you to use. And as I've said before, there are some other ways that while you build on that, while you build up your credit, you're building up your profile, even if you're working with the team, there are ways that you can still leverage this information for yourself right now, right? And let's talk about some of those things. So number one is, you can, if you don't qualify right now and you say, Kyle, I'm going to take the step, I'm going to book a call with the team, fundingmyfuture.net. I'm going to get a call with the team and I'm going to just start the ball rolling, right? Cool. But you don't have to wait the whole time to actually execute and actually bring out value and results. So what's one thing you can do is you can leverage what's called a credit partner, right? So I have a credit partner that has the credit. They're just sitting on this profile, and we're going to talk about the exact steps and the makeup of that profile. But once you know it, okay, they're sitting on that profile, so they can get funded either on their own LLC or we join up on a joint LLC, and those funds can now support what I'm going to do with my execution. You know what I mean? What I'm going to do with my business approach. So now, what does that mean for you? Is that, okay, maybe you started now and you've got, your credit is not right, but you can still be 30 days away from having access to 100K, to 150K, to 125K, you know what I mean, to 80K to be able to use for your business pursuits, right? So again, that is a really, really powerful thing to say, okay, now I just got to think a little bit outside of the box, outside of myself, and say, okay, well, who else can I partner with to be able to leverage this strategy? Because now I know the strategy. Now the question for you is, well, am I the type of person that's ready to execute on the actual business stuff? Do I have the tools? Do I have the mentors? You know what I mean? The network, the group. And speaking of mentors and network and group, this is why this is one of the biggest things that I think you can leverage this for, is in order to shortcut your path in business, mentorship and finding the right people to give you the right information is one of the best things that you can do. I was on a call just last night with a very high level entrepreneur and social media personality and things like that. And he is constantly reinvesting into mentorship for himself. He's already made millions of dollars, but he's constantly reinvesting. I'm spending 25 here. I'm spending 10 here. I'm spending 30 here for these different people to be able to get a specific skill set so that he can propel himself forward. And that's how he's been able to really skyrocket things in his journey, right? Detroit says it's the only way to grow, right? It's the only smart way to grow, right? And so that's interesting. And I appreciate that comment, Detroit. It's technically, it's not the only way to grow, because you can grow if you just do the bumps and bruises, you just do the, let me just take action and move forward and just do the best that I can. It just takes a long time to be able to do that. And your character may grow in that process, right? So I'm not discounting that. Like there is a value to like taking a long route. You know what I mean? Sometimes God is like forming certain things in us, and we just like we need the long way, you know what I mean, in order to develop into where we need to be. So I'm not discounting that. However, I am saying that when we look at the logical approach, right, the smart way to do it is if we can eliminate most of the mistakes just off the bat, and know it's still going to be energy taken, and it's still going to be difficult technically to execute like what we have to do, even if we have all the steps. But it's so much easier to do it that way than to not even know, okay, what are the steps I need to take? You know, who do I need to contact? Which person do I need to get in touch with? Right. And again, this is something that is really critical to understand, is that when you open up that business credit for yourself, right, again, through yourself or through a credit partner, when you open that up, now you can access pretty much anyone in the world, right? I've been a part of mentorship groups and masterminds and courses and things like that. And these things have ranged from $1,000 up to $40,000, $50,000, right? And all of that can be accessible to you, again, if you leverage this strategically and you're smart about how you do it and how you use it, right? Which is why I don't, I talked about you can't save up or you can, but it's going to take a long time to save up that 100,000, that 120,000. You know what I mean? Which is true, but I'm not downing the mindset around like knowing where your money is at, being able to be strategic, you know what I mean? And leveraging intention in your finances, because that is really important for business as well. It's like, if you're going to do good business, you got to know where your stuff is, and you can't just go about it loosely. So the worst thing that you can do is get access to 150K and just be like, oh, I'm just doing this, that. You have no focus. You have no personal development, you know what I mean, to be able to execute on the business. Like that's a recipe for disaster, right? Because now you have access to this, and this is like it's a powerful thing. To whom much is given, much is required. You know what I mean? It's a lot of responsibility to be able to say, okay, I have these funds, but what am I going to use it for? Right? And how am I going to leverage it? And do I have the personal development to be able to execute on whatever it is, whether that comes from a mentor or whether that comes from, here's another powerful thing you can do, is to hire virtual assistants and to get help. Now, just a quick example that I've been sharing is, okay, if I have a virtual assistant that's going to work for me for 40 hours a week, right? A high level person, college educated, a specialist, 40 hours a week. And we can do that for conservatively $1,000 a month, right? So if we want this person in our plans, like whatever we have mapped out, and we say, we're going to get somebody to work for us for 40 hours a week for $1,000 a month for 6 months. Now, what is that? That's $6,000, right? So a lot of people are hesitant about like, okay, I can't bring on somebody because I got to pay for it. You know what I mean? But if you're ready to execute on your plan and you say, okay, I need $6,000 and I can get somebody to, put in 40 hours a week for me for 6 months, and you can pull that 6,000 from the business credit or just pay it directly, because there's ways to do that when you work with certain virtual assistants and things like that. And you can just set that money aside from the business credit and just say, okay, this is taken care of. It's not something I have to think about right now. I just need to think about executing. How am I going to leverage this person to either free up more of my time or to be able to generate more income or to execute certain parts of the business or to organize things or whatever the case? That can be incredibly powerful to say, okay, well, now I have this to pull from, to be able to cover things like this. And I don't have to necessarily pull from my personal savings or my personal credit. Again, I want you to mentally treat it like personal savings and personal credit, even though it's the bank's money, right? And that's a good combination, because if you treat it like responsibly and like carefully like that, then you'll be able to make really smart moves with it. But again, it's super powerful because now you're not having to pull from your personal savings. And there are benefits with different lenders and things like that from having money in your savings account or having money in your checking account. And to be able to leave that there and still do other stuff, it's like I'm leveraging this. I don't have to actually use it. Now, even worse is if I'm using my personal credit to be able to do these things, it's not the end of the world. However, if I am using my personal credit and now I've got balances on these cards and things like that, and I had a friend, I was hosting a call the other night with real estate investors, and somebody said, hey, I just finished, I'm in a project and it's a fix and flip, and I have been using my personal cards to cover the renovation and cover these things, materials and stuff like that. And my personal credit scores are bad because my utilization is super high, right? Now he could have avoided that completely if he had just set himself up, made a few tweaks, and gotten business credit to be able to cover the entire project and keep his personal credit intact. And what does that mean when his personal credit is intact? Well, that means there's a lot more he can do on the personal side if he wants to apply for something or get a low rate for something, because this impacts a lot of things. So again, this is why I would suggest, if you're watching now, number one, I want you to like this video wherever you're watching from, and I want you to share it, right, with somebody that needs to hear it, because this is powerful information. Like I said, I've paid a lot of money for it, and I want to be able to share it with you for free so that you can push your life forward, you can elevate. And I believe all of that will come back around, whether you work with me directly or not. I feel like it'll all come back around, right? Because I want you to be equipped for this. All right. So so what we're looking at here is, again, how can we leverage this to be able to get into things faster and sooner? And we talked about mentorship, which is a huge one. Talked about getting help, and as far as virtual assistants. Another one is like ads, right? So once you have your offer, or you've kind of scrapped your way to say, okay, I have a product, or I have something that is beneficial to people, and it's working, and I just need more people to know about it. Then you can pour fuel on the fire by putting ads or doing paid advertisements. Now, one thing I will share with you, a little nugget that I will share on the, like I said, for those of you that are watching and paying attention, you just get the benefit of this, right? But there's one thing to do paid ads. It's another thing to do paid placement, right? So we talk about other people's money, OPM, but there's another one that's OPA, right? Other people's audiences. So I want you to think about your business and what you're doing, and we say, okay, I'm not only going to leverage the bank's money, but I'm going to leverage someone that has the audience that I need already, and I'm going to tap in with them. And here's what you can do is, if you have a person that has a large following, or a following that fits your niche of like exactly your ideal customer, and they've got 800,000 followers, or 300,000 followers, or 1 million followers, whatever the case, you can just message them and say, hey, could I put one of my posts on your page, and I will pay you $200, right? Or I'll pay you $300, I'll pay you $500, I'll pay you $80, or something like that. And a lot of these people that do this don't get those offers that much, so they're like, hey, I'll do that, right? Or even going live with people, hey, I will offer you such and such to be able to go live with you. And what that does is that opens up automatically their audience to what it is that you do. It's another form. Thank you so much, LaShonda. You're on it. It's another form of paid placement, right? So not only the traditional version of ads is really, really powerful to be able to implement, but these other forms of doing it, where you're leveraging everyday people or influencers or things like that, and you're using the funds that you have to be able to incentivize and to push things forward. Now, obviously, you can do this with relationship. It doesn't have to take money, but again, there's certain ones, and there's certain pages that are like theme-based pages, where it's not necessarily a person, that's like at the center of it, but it's just like Black wealth, or it's just entrepreneurship or real estate. And it's a little bit more generic theme pages, and they just post and repost different people's stuff. You know what I mean? So there's a whole industry around that. And again, if you're not pulling from your personal funds, your personal savings, then you can be able to use that business credit towards that stuff. Now, all this means is that, do you have a method of getting something forward in your business that can produce an ROI within a short amount of time? Right now, again, a lot of these things that we talked about, ads, we talked about mentorship to cut down time, talked about using virtual assistants to be able to free up your time. You can also be using this for AI tools, right? Hopefully everybody has been digging into AI recently and understanding the power of it. But again, like, where do these funds come from? Do you need somebody to consult you? Do you need to join one of these programs where somebody like knows the exact sauce on AI and what you need to do for your business, and you're not just out there YouTubing and you're out there just trying to gather information, things like that, but like really specific and really detailed. Like, this is what I need to do to be able to move forward and leverage AI. So not only can you pay for the mentorships, you can pay for the softwares and different things like that to be able to do it. And then if you do it in the right way, could that lead to more money than you put out, right? And that's like the basic strategy is, can I do something that's going to bring that back quickly? Which is why, again, how you're going to leverage this and what you're going to do is going to be really important to make sure it's the right thing that's going to produce an ROI in the right time frame, right? Because again, this is super powerful if you leverage it the right way. We are talking about business credit in the form of 0% interest, business credit cards, right? A credit stacking method. Again, this is not the only way to do things, but it's very powerful because it's very accessible. So we're talking about 0% interest for 12 to 18 months, sometimes 9 months, depending on the bank. So if you use it properly and say, okay, I'm going to do something where I'm using the bank's money. I didn't have to come out of pocket at all because I'm using the bank's money. Yep. Leander, welcome. Hi to you too. I'm using the bank's money to be able to move forward and make an investment that has an ROI that's sooner than the 0% interest period is going to end. All right. Sounds simple, but incredibly powerful. So if we're saying that if I get $100,000, so on average, a lot of our clients, like I said, my last client was 95,000, but she just stopped there just because that was enough for her for what her purposes at that point. A lot of our clients, like on average in the first little round, we're looking at like 130,000, 110,000, things like that. So, so the benefit of using that, right, is saying, okay, I've got those funds, and let's say I took 30,000 and got into a fix and flip, right? Because I use it. You can use it for the down payment because you can liquidate that from cash over into your account, right? There's ways to liquidate that, and we have access to specific companies that can do that. So where it's not a cash advance, you're not getting charged the extra fees, you're not getting charged that high rate. It's like a purchase, so you're still getting that 0% interest and the most like advantaged approach to it, but you can have that cash in your account. And there's some things in real estate where I have to maybe apply, or I have to get approved or pre-qualified based on the certain amount of cash that I have in my account. So if you can put that in your account and let that season for a month or two, and you do your numbers and make sure everything is tight, but you can do that and leverage that into certain loans with larger lenders. You know what I mean? So you can use this in combination with traditional banks, use it in combination with hard money lenders and things like that. And hope this is not over your heads for anybody that's not like directly into real estate, but I want to explain the power of this. You can use this to cover an entire deal, depending on the size of the deal, right? So again, if you have 150,000 and the property that you're targeting costs 20,000, and you put $50,000 worth of renovation into it, you can cover the whole thing with it. Your holding costs, all that. And we're saying you do your flip, you do your renovation, and then within 4, 5, 6 months, you have the property finished. Now you can either sell it or you have a cash out refinance, depending on your numbers. And that covers all of that you put in. Like that, you can rinse and repeat that practically forever. Right? You can do that practically forever. So again, this is the power of this. Once you know the formula, right? What is that formula to say, okay, once I have this, now this world is opened up to me, right? And again, it's opened up because it's no document programs, no tax returns, no bank statements, no financial statements, no business plans. None of that is needed. So again, if you have the skill, the will, and the desire to push through and actually execute and like do the business, the funds are there for you, right? With this formula. So we're going to go through it right now. Now, if you're watching, if you've gotten any value from this at all, I appreciate you tapping in here and pushing yourself forward at whatever time of night it is for you. I put my daughter down not too long ago. I'm hoping she doesn't wake up and interrupt this, but until then, I'm going to just go hard and share this information with you, right? So, but if you're just watching, I want you to hit the like button. I want you to share this with somebody that needs it, And for your own sake, I would like for you to book a free consultation call with the team. All right, go to fundingmyfuture.net or hit the link in my bio, right? Or DM me, whatever you got to do. And you're going to book a free consultation call because we're going to walk through the exact like next steps for you in particular, right? Your situation, everybody's situation is different. The state that you're in, the banks that you currently use, your goals, you know what I mean? Like, do you have properties or, you know, any of these different things? Like, all of it is very different. So it's a unique, customized conversation, and you're going to get value in the form of like, what do I need to do next? Right. Again, regardless of who you decide to work with or move forward with, you're going to get that value and get that next step. And that's what I want for you is to have the awareness to know, okay, where am I in relation to this? Like, am I set up to do this? Am I set up to take advantage of this? Right. So again, put your questions in the chat. Put your questions in the chat. LaShonda says, this is really good, Kyle. LaShonda, I appreciate you. And I'm glad you're tapped in here. And I'm glad this is helpful for you. Right. So let's keep it moving. So what is the personal credit profile? How do you build the right profile? How do you recognize the right profile that's going to get the max amount of funding? Right. So let's take a look at it. Right. So the first thing you're going to look at is your personal credit profile. It's your credit score, but it's not your credit score. Right. And you'll hear people talk about different credit scores, or do you have your FICO score, you know, your Vantage score? Like, don't use Credit Karma and use this and don't use that. Detro, yes, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Instagram and YouTube as well right now. Yep. So I'm I'm getting the word out however I can, right? So yeah, so people talk about which credit monitoring and which FICO score and which score matters. So in this case, I'm telling you that the score does not matter, right? The score does not matter. Now, why is that? Because we're looking at the profile overall. So there are some people who have credit scores in the 700, 750, 780 that are still getting denied for business funding. How is that possible? Right? Because it's not just the score. And it's not even like, even if you have a 750 FICO score, it's still possible to have that and still get denied because the profile is not robust enough that the banks want to latch onto it. Right now, what does that look like? And that's because the personal credit scores are made, it's like a mathematical equation that adds up to the personal credit score. The scores range from 300 to 850, right? So there's a 550 point swing, and those 550 points are broken down into percentages basically. And if you look at any credit monitoring app, you'll see, okay, 30% of your score is based on this, 35%, 10% based on this. So that's how those points add up. And you can do some quick math to say, okay, if I fix this part, my score would go up at a maximum, you know, this amount of points. So you can have, if you have one credit card and one, you know, store card or something like that, and two things on your account, and you manage those really well, you never had any missed payments, you never had any charge-offs or anything like that, no negatives, you could have a 720 credit score, a 730 or something like that. But you don't have enough stuff in your profile to get over the hump with the banks. Right. So again, it is credit score, but it's not credit score. So if it's not credit score, Kyle, what is it? Let's talk about that right now. Right. So number one, the credit cards that you have are one of the most important things. Right. So you need to have at least, at bare minimum, 2 credit cards of $3,000 limit or higher. That's the bare minimum. Right. And ideally, you've had those cards for more than a year. Now, the ideal is I've got $10,000 cards. I've got 2 $10,000 cards, or 15 or 20,000 or 5,000, right? The more the better as far as the limits on your personal cards. Why is this? Because for my real estate people, this is the same thing where if I have comps in real estate and I want to, let's say I flip a property and I put work into it, it looks great, and I say I want 300,000 for this property. Right. And the bank looks at other properties that are exactly the same that have sold in the area recently. And those properties have sold for 110,000, 120,000. Guess what? They're not going to do. They're not about to give me 300,000 for that property. Right. Even if it seems like it's worth it, it's going to go based on what is really and actually there. Right. So this is the same thing in our personal credit when it comes to business credit. They're looking at the personal credit profile to determine, okay, well, what comps do we have? What basis do we have to be able to lend you these funds, and what amount we're going to lend you? If you only have a $500 card from Capital One on your personal credit report, right? And they're not going to give you a $25,000 card on the business credit side if that's your biggest card, right? So you have to be able to look at, okay, well, what do I have? So this is why we say if you got $10,000, $20,000, $15,000 on your personal cards, then now they can do a multiplier typically on the business side, depending on the bank or institution that you're working with, right? So that's a good thing about business credit too, is the amounts that you get are actually a lot higher typically on the business credit side than the personal credit side, but we're going to be based on that personal profile, right? So that's the biggest one. So if that is you right now, you say, I've got at least a couple credit cards, they're over $3,000 limit, they're over 5,000, they're over 10,000, then you are like on the way, right? Like well on the way to be able to move forward with business credit. Like that's one of the biggest things, right? Because it takes time. If you don't have it, it takes time to build it up. And like I already said, if you don't have it, don't fear. You just need to start working today. You just need to start getting moving today, right? And get the ball rolling. And when you get the ball rolling, ideally it's still under consultation so that you know what's important to add and what's not important to add, right? Like you can cut down the time as much as possible, right? And then again, there are ways you can leverage this while you work, while you build it up. And we talked about that before, right? So let's keep going with the personal credit makeup, right? So 2 cards, credit cards. Now, next big one is your utilization. Your utilization needs to be below 30% across all your cards, as well as each individual card. That's the bare minimum. Now, bare minimum is very different than the ideal. What is the ideal? The ideal is you've got less than 10% utilization across all your cards and each individual card, right? So what can be the difference when we talk about ideal versus bare minimum, right? Bare minimum, you can get in the door, but some of these approvals might look very different. And depending on who you work with, some people, for the sake of time and kind of pushing people through, will, I would say, shortcut some of these things to not go for the max amount of funding that you can possibly get, right? And what can these differences be? I had a friend that went a certain way and decided to do some things themselves and work with somebody else. And they got from a particular bank, they got an approval for, I think it was $9,000, right? Cool. 9,000 is great. You could do a lot with 9,000, right? However, the same card, the client that I was working with, we got her $50,000, same bank, same card, right? Just applying different strategies and these things that I'm telling you tonight, right? So the setup does matter, and sometimes it takes a little bit of extra time or a little bit of extra work, but again, the result at the end of it is so much larger and so much better that it can be worth putting that extra time in, right? So your utilization. One quick thing on utilization. Again, please put your questions in the chat. All right, put your questions in the chat. And if this has been valuable for you at all, like I said, please hit the like button, share this with somebody so that this information can get out there, and you can tell the algorithm that this is something that's worthwhile, right? So one thing about utilization, and I have to share this now because it's a really big thing that people miss, is if your utilization is high, right, and you don't have any other problems on your credit report, right? Like no late payments, you got no charge-offs, no negatives and things like that. You got a good amount of accounts, but your utilization is just high just because either A, you've been doing business and trying to work things out and you're using your personal credit, right? And some that you got to do what you got to do. You know, if you have an ROI and you have a plan, you know, there's nothing necessarily wrong with using your personal credit. Your score is going to go down, but when you pay it off, it'll go back up, you know, so that's a possibility. You know, however, some people just kind of get tied up where I'm using my personal credit, right? Or life has been lifing and maybe you haven't just been all the way on top of it and your personal cards just have balances on them. You know what I mean? And you're above 30%, right? So if you have that, you could be one move away, and I want you to write this down because this is a super sauce right now, right? You could be one move away from being totally ready for business funding, right? What does that move? Is because of the way that the personal credit score is made up, right? Chris, I see you tapped in. What's up, man? The way that this credit score is made up, is based on your revolving credit card balances, right? On the personal side, revolving credit cards. It's not based on these other product types, which are like installment loans and things like that. Now, what is that? What's the difference? Is your credit card you can pull from, you can pay off, the payment's going to be different every time. An installment is typically it's a fixed amount, right? So you have a fixed amount that you have a fixed payment like a car payment, right? It's the same thing every month, and it's got a term, it's got a beginning point and an ending point unless you do something different, right? So what you can do is you can just literally shift over. Let's say, for example purposes, let's say I have $10,000 in personal credit balances, and let's say I've used up most of my utilization for that 10,000, right? I can get a personal loan for $10,000, right? And with that personal loan, pay off the credit cards. Now, what has just happened? I didn't change my budget. I didn't get any more money technically, right? It just shifted from one instrument to another instrument. And what's going to happen is because those revolving credit card balances go down, my credit score immediately shoots up, right? Now, the other thing, benefit number 2 from doing that is that the payments that I'm making on the interest of the credit cards versus the interest of that personal loan, even if you didn't do anything else, the payments are already going to be lower, right? So you're benefiting in that way already off the bat, right? And it could be simpler if you had multiple credit cards and multiple payments and now you just have one, right? So even if you stop there, that would be a benefit, right? But the next thing is, if that was the only thing holding you back from funding, now with that one move, which could be reporting as soon as you pay your cards down and whenever they report. And one thing you do want to watch for is look at your credit card statements to know when do those statement dates hit, so that if you are doing this strategy, you want to make sure you pay that stuff down before the statement date hits, so that it will report with the lower balance and that will impact your credit score, right? So, but when you do that and you're ready for business funding, now we can go get access to 100K, to 120K, 150K, right? And be able to effectively move the balance from the personal loan over to the business credit side. Because then there's different ways we can do it, to liquidate or balance transfer or different things like that, to be able to move those funds over to the business side. And now guess where we are? Now we're in 0% interest. So we just went from 29% interest probably over to maybe a 15%, 15 to 18% on personal loans, depending on your setup, right? And now we've gone all the way over to 0% interest. So imagine the savings on that just off the bat. And now what can we do with the rest of our business credit? We can say, okay, what do we have left? Now we can use what we have left to be able to generate new income, right? To execute new business. Everything that we talked about, like leveraging some help, some mentorship, some virtual assistants, some ads, and things like that. All that stuff you can use it for. And meanwhile, you're gaining points along the way the whole time that you can leverage towards travel and cash back and all sorts of stuff, right? Just from the course of regular business. And I'll just give you one quick example. I have a friend that is working for a kind of like a marketing company, and they've been using debit cards for all of their ad budget and all of their, monthly expenses and things like that. And he said that they spend about $50,000 a month, right? This is like a bigger operation. They spend $50,000 a month on these things, and they're using just the debit cards because the money goes out, money comes in. Cool, all good. I told him, if you use the right business credit card for that, you literally could be taking your family to Dubai every month, your family of 4, like every month, just off of the rewards points that you would get from that. Leveraging the right cards and the right strategies and the right redemption and things like that. There's some different things you can do, but even that in itself is a game changer as well, because not only are you isolating your personal credit and keeping your scores higher, which lowers your interest on everything else that you do, which opens up your access. Again, you can leverage this for lines of credit and all sorts of stuff when you have more money in your savings, but you're accessing this business credit at 0%, and you're able to use this for pretty much whatever you want, and you're getting those credit card points as well. So like triple, quadruple benefit, right? So boss lady, what's up? Good evening. So yep, so next. So those two are the biggest ones, and I hope that freed somebody to say, oh, if utilization was the only thing that I was dealing with, and there's actually a way to be able to get that handled where I don't have to necessarily come out of pocket like directly, and that could be in the next, those things, those loans if you're with the, depending on who you're with, that could be 48 hours and you have that money in your account, right? And you pay those off. And again, depending on a max of 30 days, basically, because all of your cards are going to report at some point over the next 30 days. So a max of 30 days, you could be in position to be, again, ready for funding and to push through. Yep. So um Andy says, as a business relationship manager, you can safely say this is BS. All right, man. Hey, say what you want to say. I have $500,000. I got the cards right here. It depends on the bank and the institution. But I guess, Andy, if you are participating in this conversation, let me know specifically what you mean, like which part specifically, right? And maybe we can get some more information to the people, right, properly, right? So again, the proof is in the pudding as far as like the access that you can get, right? So let's keep going. So next is we talked about utilization, we talked about the cards, right? So the inquiries on your profile, the more inquiries you have, the worse chance you have, right? And uh the caveat that you need to know about is that the inquiries have a little bit less impact when it's 6 months or older. So if you have some inquiries on your report that are older than 6 months, then you can sometimes squeeze by with those, right? If they're if they're younger than 6 months, then they're going to have more of a negative impact, right, on our chances for funding, for approvals, for et cetera, right? So what can you do about this is an important factor to understand when it comes to business credit, is that none of these accounts, if you're doing it properly, none of these accounts show up on your personal credit report, right? So, and what does that mean is if I have a business credit card, I leverage my personal credit to be able to get into the door, right? So they actually, the way that this does impact your personal credit in the beginning is you're going to get a hard pull, a hard inquiry on your personal credit report under a certain bureau, depending on what the bank is and what they do, right? So that's the starting point. Now, because these accounts are not showing up on your personal credit report, if you work with the right banks that don't report to the personal, because there are some banks that use business credit cards that do report to personal, and typically we avoid those, right? So if you're working with the right people, those cards don't show up. So when you get inquiries from these banks, you technically have the right, because it's not attached to an open account on your personal, you technically have the right to remove those inquiries from your personal credit file, right? So what happens is we can go to these different banks and get establish a relationship with them and get their business card product. And then once that inquiry comes through, because it's not tied to an open account on our personal report, technically you have the ability to be able to remove and wipe those inquiries off, right? So what people are doing is you can get access to these different cards and then like literally go and wipe off all the inquiries, and then you have basically like a clean slate that you can rinse and repeat and do this over and over, multiple times, right? So your inquiries, that's the next point. So now next is your primary accounts. You need to have at least 7 to 10 primary accounts reporting on your credit file at minimum, right? So these are not just your credit cards. This is across the board, everything that you have. So mortgages, student loans, auto loans, credit cards, store cards. Do you have at least 10 of these that are called trade lines, but at least 10 that are on your report in your name, right? If you don't have that, then you need to start building up towards it. Because again, like I said, you could have a high score if you've managed everything well, but your funding readiness can be lower if you don't have enough accounts or enough variety of accounts to basically prove like, how have I handled the money that I have been gifted to be able to access, right? So that's the next one. So next is the average age of your credit. It needs to be at least 4 years or more. And if you have 2 years or more, you can kind of squeeze in the door. But again, ideally we want to go for the max possible, right? So if it's 4 years or more, you can look at your credit monitoring, and typically they will have something to aggregate all the ages of your different accounts, and it will give you an average age, right? If not, you can put it into a calculator. There's different calculators that you can find to do that. And that's going to be put you in the best spot, right? I'm going to talk about average age and how you can impact that in just a second. But basically, the rest of it is no derogatories and no negatives on your report. So what is that? No late payments, no collections, no charge-offs, no bankruptcy, right? Clean, clean, clean. Only caveat to that is if you have late payments that are older than 2 years, sometimes you can squeeze in the door. How do I know? Because I work with the client and she had some student loan late payments that something was supposed to come off, it didn't, and it was a couple 3 or 4 years old, and we still were able to get her 75,000 on the from one bank, and then we were able to get her another 30 something thousand, and she ended up with 105 before she had what she needed to get moving, and that was with those late payments on there, right? Now, this varies. So different banks are going to have different criteria, a different stomach for things. So ideally, everything is clean, clean, clean. And if there's a way to get it off or get it removed or get it reversed, then we want to prioritize that to make it clean. However, there are some nuances that typically can squeeze you through, right? So I just wanted you to know about that. So that was the whole blueprint. All right. So we talk about building a fundable credit profile. Like, what does that look like? That's the whole blueprint, right? I just laid it out for you. So if you have that, like I said, regardless of who you decide to work with, if you execute on that and check your profile and say, okay, check mark, check mark, check mark, then you are in position to do well for yourself, right? Again, the results are going to vary depending on who you decide to work with or what angle you take, or if you decide to do it yourself. However, you're going to be in the best position to be able to move forward in that way, right? So let me go back to the average age of your credit and your utilization, because there is something that you can do to be able to impact that positively if for some reason you don't have everything lined up to be able to have those sweet spots, right, of the average age of 4+ years, or your utilization under that 30% mark, or ideally under that 10% mark. So there's one thing that you can do, and that's having to do with what's called an authorized user trade line, right? And this is when someone else has a credit card that has good history, that has a certain amount of age, that has a certain utilization, and they add you as an authorized user, right? When that happens, those credit factors get applied to the other person's account, right? To the other person's credit profile. And the way that it impacts the most is those two categories: is your average age, right? Because the age gets applied to your account and the utilization gets applied to your account, right? Now, what this doesn't do, it's not a silver bullet to say, okay, I've added these and now the bank is assuming that these are mine and I can just make moves because these are my cards. It doesn't work like that because it's not in your name. It shows it clearly on the report that it's an authorized card. However, when the computer is looking at these different factors and where you fall in like the average age category, it does change how the computer treats you or what bucket it puts you in. So if you can do something to add and change your age, even if it's using authorized user trade lines, then that is a benefit to you, right? If your utilization is at a certain point and you need to bump it down, sometimes you can actually pay for or get added to a credit card as an authorized user, and now that utilization ratio can change. The math can change because now you added more limit, and even if what you currently have didn't change, technically the overall utilization is a big difference, right? So there are marketplaces where you can buy these things, but if you know somebody, if you have a family member that has a card that is not using it, that's and it's old as dirt, and they have done well, they've never had any late payments on it, then that could be a thing where you could just ask them, hey, to add me on, right? Another side thing is if you have children, this is a way to kind of jumpstart their credit profile, is you can add them as authorized users and start their credit profile with this positive information while they build up the other stuff that's in their name, right? So so again, so I just laid out the whole blueprint for you. If you're just joining, then we went through like what exactly do you need to be lined up to access 50,000, 100,000, 150,000 in business credit at 0% interest with no documents, no tax returns required, no bank statements, no personal financial statements, no business plans, right? All that, no revenue. If you have it, then great. And I do want to touch on a point. Like, I'm sharing this because I think it's really powerful to be able to use and to leverage, right? However, There are many other ways to get funding and to get funded. Most of those other ways are not necessarily going to be 0%, but they have their pros and cons and their advantages, right? So the good thing is when you book a call with the team, when you go to fundingmyfuture.net and book a call with the team, we can help with pretty much everything across the board, right? So that includes the 0% funding that we've been talking about, but it's also if you need equipment financing, if you need term loans, if you're looking to get like an SBA loan, that like you want to buy a business or take over a business or something like that, you need an SBA loan. We can help with pretty much all that. So if you have 2 years in business, and you've got tax returns and you've got business income, you know what I mean, of $10,000 or more, over the past 6 months, and you can prove that, and you got the business plans and all the statements and things like that, then there's a lot you can do. If you got properties, if you got stock portfolio, you can leverage these things into different lines of credit and all sorts of stuff. And that's the benefit of this same process, being able to advise you on that whole arc. And speaking of advising, here's another advantage, um, where a lot of sometimes when you are in this industry, people are obviously like focused on, okay, let's get you funded and stuff like that, right? And we are doing that as well. However, there's another layer of relationship that's added to it, because we are working with clients over a long period of time, and we're advising along the way, right? To like, what are the best ways to leverage this? What are the best things to do? But then also to be able to teach and educate you on how you can do it yourself in the future, right? So there is a component of that where it's like, we want you to know, to be empowered, right, to either do it or to share it with other people, um, and then basically as a good faith move, to be able to generate more leads and more referrals just based on that, right? Now, as I'm right here, I have to share this again. If you're just joining and you did not hear it before, this is like a win-win scenario, and I love win-win-win scenarios whenever possible, right? I think the world runs on that best. I think that's the way God designed things, so that we can create win-wins, right? Abundance. So one of the ways that I am doing that is I want the next generation to be able to win as well in a high way, and to be able to start ahead of where we started, as far as the knowledge, as far as the access, the tools, the resources that they have to push things forward. So I have dedicated personally to reinvest and to donate a portion of my profits towards a fund that's going to be helping young entrepreneurs to get into real estate, to get into business, to get into investment, to get into entrepreneurship, to financial literacy, to wealth building, to life insurance, and just understanding these different tools and levers. So if you are working with me in any capacity, just know that that is a part of the equation. Again, to be able to create that win-win. And I just, in my heart, I felt like, if I start this business on the foundation of giving, then it's going to work out and come around, so I wanted to make sure that you understood that, right? So again, if you are here tapped in, I appreciate you. And if you have gotten any value from this, like I said, if you haven't hit the like button, then hit it. Keep on hitting it. Let the algorithm know that this is good information. Share this with somebody, so that someone else can get this benefit and information that is so powerful and life changing. And I want to keep this going again, and put your question in the chat if you have any questions, right? What is on your mind? Like, what has been potentially holding you back, or like, what do you feel like? Do you feel like you don't qualify for this, or like, is this different from this other angle of doing things? um Put your question in the chat. And like I said, I want to emphasize, there's a lot of people that like take a very hard stance against other people that educate about this stuff. It's like, okay, well, this is the only way. I'm not that type of person. Like, there's a lot of ways to do it, a lot of ways to leverage it. And we hear a lot of people talk about like no PG funding, right? Or EIN only funding and things like that, where it's like, okay, my personal name is not tied to it at all. I've built up the business and the business credit scores and things like that to be able to access certain types of funding, right? So that it is a real thing. It's just limited in certain ways, and it does typically take longer to build up, right? But even if you do build it up, like for example, there are ways to leverage that approach if you are like anything that has to do with vehicles, you need like auto loans and vehicle financing and things like that. There are ways to leverage that approach to be able to say, okay, I've got my EIN only, I built it up, and now I can get an auto loan in the business, that's not tied to me at all. But the difference is to be able to get like a credit card or like some sort of cash credit, that's going to be very limited without at the least tapping into your personal credit to see who is running behind this, right? And this is what the banks do is where, even if it's like a no PG product, what is a PG? A personal guarantee is like a contract that says if something goes wrong, I will take care of it. I will be responsible, like super, super wrong. So again, these accounts do not show up on your personal credit, right? But the only way that they would is if you were to default, like super default, like I disappeared off the face of the earth. I didn't pay any payments for, 90 days. And that's the only time it's going to kind of come to your credit report, right? So again, the value of this is where I can get into this type of funding and be able to do it quickly and get these high amounts, right? So if you have a no PG product, typically they're still going to do a personal check. They're going to look at your credit to be able to approve you for it, but they might not hold you to that to where it's like, okay, this is based on the EIN only at the end of the day, but we still looked at your profile to be able to get you in the door. You know what I mean? It's like still a combination. So that does vary, right? So Monty says, you're trying to start real estate investment. You've set up your LLC, your EIN, and your Dun and Bradstreet number. Cool. Right. So we can talk, Monty, about this next phase, this next pillar. So the one was the pillar of the personal credit profile. The other one is your business entity setup, right? Your structure. How is it presented to the banks? That's the other part that's super important that again we can go through right now. So you said you joined DB just to see your business score, and once you did it, the lending went from 7,000 to 4,000. You don't know what happened. Let me know. Let me know what you mean. You're saying when you said the lending went from 7,000 to 4,000. Let me know exactly what you mean and see if I can touch base on that. Right. So and again, when we talk about business scores, there's a whole world of understanding the business credit scores and what things you can do with it and things like that. The reason that what I'm talking about is freeing in a lot of ways is because you don't even need a business score to be able to access these funds. If you have the personal credit profile structure that I just shared with you, all those bullet points that I just shared about the personal profile, and then you combine that with the bullet points that I'm about to share on the LLC, right? When you combine those two things, you can get access to 50,000, 100,000, 120, 150, 200,000. Right, in business credit in that 0% arena. So again, that's why I say is you can go directly there, right? And here's another caveat that a lot of people don't consider. A lot of times when you're building up your business credit score, you're having to leverage these net 30 accounts and these different vendor accounts. Well, I got to do a Uline, I got to buy Quill and Granger, and I got to buy these different products so that my business can start to stand on its own and have its own credibility, right? And then maybe I get up after a couple months, I've been doing that, and I get up and I can buy a gas card, you know what I mean? And get access to these different gas cards and some store cards and things like that. And then maybe at some point down the road, I can get some credit cards or some lines of credit or things like that, right? So that, like I said, that is a thing. It just takes a bit longer to be able to build up. Now, if you go about it this other way, all right, this is a real critical point. If you go about this other way where I say I do the stacking first, I leverage my personal credit to be able to get access to these high limit credit cards on the business side. Now, if we talk, for those of you that have been tapped in, we've been talking about comps, right, in real estate. So these are the comparables for your credit that they use to base your business credit approvals, right? So if even on the business credit side, if I start my business credit profile with these high limit cards, $10,000, 20,000, 25, 40,000, right? 35,000. Guess what that does? Is it starts my business credit profile, right? Depending on which banks report to, but that starts it off my Experian business. Some of these financial trade lines that are really important to look at, it starts it off on a very high foot, right? So because now I've got 10,000, I got 25,000. And if you manage it well, you pay it down well, you use it, you pay it off. You know what I mean? You're executing good business. That can be a great foot to stand on. And then if and when you decide to build up the business credit to be able to stand on its own more, now when you go to the vendor accounts, when you go to these other things, you can actually get higher approvals, right? Because they're looking at what's on your business credit report and say, oh, well, you got 15,000 here, you got 25,000 here, then we can give you a higher limit. Versus when you go that other route, they're typically approving you for $250, for $500, right? For these different net 30 accounts. Because the thing is, you can just walk in off the street and start a business, and you say, okay, I'm going to buy these products from you, and I've got 30 days to pay you back. And guess what? I could just decide not to pay you back. This is why this is kind of risky for them, but they know people want to build up their business credit. So this is why these companies kind of exist, to be able to do that, right? So so that's another way to go about it. So I want to just make sure, so Monty said that this is an approval for a dollar amount, right? And yeah, so that's why I say looking at this approach can be a very straightforward way to get access to these high limit amounts that you can use, again, depending on your strategy. You can leverage pretty much for anything in business, right? So you may not even have to worry about, okay, what did my my business score do here or there, or if you leverage this properly, then it's like the best foot that you can stand on to be able to get in the door. Right. So let me know if that makes sense. So let's go through real quick. I'm answering any questions that you have, but let's go through real quick on the business credit, the business entity structure. Like, what do you need on that entity structure, right? So here we go. Write this down and keep track. So number one is your name needs to be not a high risk name, right? The more generic, the better, because your name is going to indicate, whether you want it to or not, is going to indicate certain industries, and the bank's going to judge you based on your name. So when you have a name that you share with them, and they look at that, and they're going to judge it and say, okay, this is this business code. Even if you have a totally different business code, totally different business model, if your name indicates something, then they're probably going to do that. And if that results in a high risk industry in the eyes of the bank, that could mean a denial, or it can mean a low limit approval, right? So what are the generic ones that you can use? Anything that's like keyword and enterprises, keyword and group, keyword and solutions, right? Some of these very generic things, it could be last name and solutions. The generic things, right, that can be geared in a lot of different directions. And if you do have an official NAICS code, or your official communication, like on your website and different things that we're going to talk about right now, if you have those things set up, then basically your things that you want to go for are going to be anything having to do with consulting, with marketing, or with like education. Those are generally like very, very safe. Now, one thing that you hear a lot of people say is like, hey, do consulting. But everybody started hearing about that, and everybody started doing consulting. And some of the banks changed the way that they look at consulting, right? Because there was too many people doing it, and people weren't on top of their stuff, right? So now consulting with certain banks is not the number one thing anymore, right? So like I said, so if you can gear this in any way, shape, or form, regardless of what your business is, if you can reasonably say, okay, I'm going to do marketing, potentially for other people, or I'm going to be doing consulting in this area for other people, or I'm going to be doing education in any way, shape, or form, and you can gear that, position that towards the banks, that's going to be the highest chance, or the least friction that you have towards getting high limit approvals and things like that, right? So this is a big deal. So number two is your business address is really important, right? So the address, you probably want to have the address ideally before you even have the LLC, before you even start anything, you would get the right address with the right setup, right? Because that can change your approvals. It can really change everything, right? So what is it with the address? You want to avoid anything that looks, smells, quacks like a PO box, right? And let me just answer this question. So, and thank you, Shar, for sharing the live. Appreciate you sharing. So, Monty, can you change your business name? Current business is Creative Life Plan LLC, right? Creative Life Plan may not be a problem. right? But if you do want to change your name, you can change the name. It's just inconvenient. You know what I mean? So that's why I say if you start fresh or if you start a new LLC, then it's easy to just say, okay, let me just line this up properly from the beginning. If you have to change it, it's inconvenient because you got to change it in this place, make sure it's updated here. Same thing with the address. You got to change it here. You got to call this place. You got to call the IRS. And here's just a quick nugget is that if you do have to change your EIN stuff, you need to call the IRS and make sure you get them to fax you your result, right? When they change the address or if you're changing the name or anything like that, make sure they fax it to you rather than waiting for the process for them to mail it. Because when they mail it, it takes who knows how long, especially in this current government situation. Sometimes it can take, it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks for them to mail it to you. But if you can get the person to fax it over the phone, then you can have it right there and start to make your next moves, right? So you said, Monty, you said you have an address with Staples, right? So again, so the Staples, and this is like typically I would see Staples on like iPostal One, right? A lot of their addresses you can get from there is tied to a Staples, and you have it's a business address that you can use, but it's really like a mailbox. Now, the way that you can tell for sure, and like I said, you want to avoid anything that looks or smells like a post office box because banks don't like it. It seems unsecure to them. It seems risky to them, and anything that's risk, then they shy away from, or you get a denial. Even the state, I had somebody share with me that they're trying to open a business in the state of Maryland, and they use an address from Opus, right, which is a very reputable company, virtual address company, have a lot of good features, but they use that address exactly as it was given to them, and the state wouldn't even let them open the business because it said this is like a post office box. We're not going to let you do that. So you have to be super mindful of that, right? So when you're looking at that address, the one thing you can do to double check, like, how is this thing showing up? Is it showing up as an office, a business office, or is it showing up as a mailbox? Right? Here's the one thing you can do. You can put your address into Google. Inside of, you look for the USPS zip code lookup, right? When you go into zip code lookup, you're going to look for some line items on there. And the line items are going to say, one of them is going to be CMRA. And if you look at CMRA and there's a Y next to CMRA, then that's a problem. What is it? It's commercial mail receiving agency. And that's like basically telling everyone that the purpose of this address is to send and receive mail for different people, right? It's not a place to like host businesses. So that's an immediate indicator that this is like essentially a post office box, which is a problem for a lot of banks, right? So what you're going to do, like I said, Monty, so you said you need to use a brick and mortar address, right? So yes, you need to use a brick and mortar address, but even if you get, like I said, I did a search like on iPostal One, for example, which sometimes, and this is how they get you, because the cheaper ones that are $10 a month, all of those are Staples and 7-Eleven and different things like that. Where again, the other thing is, if you Google this on Google Street View, you put in the address and you put it on Street View, and you see that it looks like a nice office building, that's a bonus, right? But if you Google it on Street View and you see, okay, this is a Staples, now this is a clear indication that this is not where you run your business. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to shortcut into the sauce recently with a lot of our clients. For this reason, banks have been shying away from virtual addresses, kind of in general, right? Some of them still work fine. If you use some of the strategies I'll share, then you can set yourself up for the most success. However, a lot of people have been getting funded with their home address, right? Versus using a virtual address. So you say, Kyle, what are you talking about? Why would I use my home address to do that? I don't want my home address out there in the public. You know what I mean? And also, why would I use my home address when sometimes, like, if I go for the really, really big funding, they might look at my home address sideways and say, what kind of business are you running? And it's your home address, right? So, however, for this strategy, like I said, there's specific nuances that make this very accessible. The home address is more stable in the eyes of the bank, right? Because once COVID happened, a lot of people were running business from home, and it kind of became a norm. But also, this is also a place that, okay, we know like where you are. You know what I mean? Like, we know this is a concrete place that you're at. And this is like, again, stability communicates safety to the banks. So the more stable they feel, the better they are. And the better they are, the more money they're going to lend to you. All right. So a lot of people are using a home address. So how does this work, Kyle? Right? How can I do this to where I can leverage this properly? Is people have sometimes a dedicated funding LLC. And what does that look like? I have this LLC that is strictly for funding. I get funded on that LLC, and then I can use those funds to be able to loan out to my other business, right? Or my other businesses. And again, that's still at 0% interest if you do it the right way. Right. So now what does that mean? Now I have my other LLC that is client facing. Right. So I have my client facing LLC, and that one I can have whatever name I want, whatever address I want. I mean, because I'm not necessarily going to be using this to try to get funding directly. So I just have something set up exactly the way the banks want to see it. And I have something else. You can kind of pull this off within one entity. If you use a DBA, you know what I mean? Like you have the generic stuff as your entity, and then you have a DBA and a DBA website potentially of like, okay, this is the name that I want my clients to see. This is the website I want my clients to see, and I have another website for the banks, right? So that's definitely a thing. So let's get back to the questions real quick. So I hope that's starting to answer your question about brick and mortar. Yes, brick and mortar, but you can get away with a virtual address sometimes if you show that this is not a commercial mail receiving agency. If it shows up at that, that's a red flag. You just need to avoid it, period. If it doesn't, you still might run into an issue, right? But you're going to be the best position to be able to move forward with it if it shows up like a regular office, right? Let's go on. So MD says my LLC has trucking in the name, and I use my home address, right? So again, so that trucking in the name can be an issue, right? Again, depending on the bank. So he said, but I've been open for 4 years, and I have rose over 300,000 in the last 2 years with one truck, right? That's gross, right? MD. Yep. So yeah, so that's value, right? So the name itself, like I said, if you got trucking in there, that is an indication of a high risk industry. This doesn't mean that you're not going to get any funding, but it does mean that certain banks are going to just outright deny, and then some banks are going to give lower limits, and there might be a few banks that like are friendly with that industry and are okay with it. But again, the strategy is going to change drastically versus if you had something set up that was a lot more generic, and then you can go for that funding and be able to leverage towards what you need to do. The other thing, MD, that you need to be mindful of, if you've got 300,000, with one truck, then that income, you could be using that income to be able to get revenue-based funding, right? So again, you're bringing some sort of asset to the table in order for them to fund you. So what is that? This could be, your revenue and your bank statements that you have. This could be properties and things that you can leverage towards more funding. Again, stock portfolio, life insurance. Also, the other one that we've been talking about this whole time is the asset of you, right? Your personal credit profile is the asset that you're bringing to the table, because it's something that banks can feel comfortable with. Because it's like, if this person has gone their whole life and built up this amount of credit and this history, and they've paid people back and all that stuff, then that is something that we can latch on to. Even if this business, we don't know much about it, it's just started, but because this person is running it, now we're willing to get involved, right? Again, that's the power of that. So MD, so that's something to be mindful of. So you might be able to change the name. You know what I mean? You might be able to, like I said, you could establish a funding LLC depending on your goals. And one little caveat I will add in here, which I haven't really shared on the lives before, is that there are certain lines of credit that you can access if your LLC is 2 years or older, and some of those can be obtained in a no doc situation, right? So typically, business lines of credit, and the difference is, for those that don't know, the line of credit is I can just pull liquid cash out of it immediately. I'm paying interest on it immediately when I use it, but I don't have to jump through any hoops. I don't have to worry about if someone takes credit card. I don't have to do like a liquidation process to get liquid cash off the cards. I just have my account. I say, hey, I want $3,000 tomorrow, and it's just wired into my account. And now I'm starting to pay interest on it. So a line of credit can be very useful in certain situations, but there are certain lines of credit that you can actually get in a no doc state if you have 2 years in business. Now, here's the thing that you can do. If you know that there's something that you want to target and you have the plan for how you want to map that out, then there is a possibility to purchase an aged corporation, right, that has over 2 years, that has over 4 years, over 6 years of history built into it. You merge your information in with it. You probably file a foreign entity and things like that. But when you do that, you can potentially leverage some of those programs. It doesn't bring in the history of the business when it comes to like the tax returns and it's not going to just automatically just give you all of that history. However, because of the way some of these approvals work, when you have the right combination and the computer can just put you through, there are some lines of credit, which could result in 50,000, could result in 100,000, could result in 25,000. There are some lines of credit that you can access with just having that set up, and you've got the business that's older than 2 years, and now you can get access to that. Some banks, you can even do dual products under one hard inquiry, right? Where I've got a line of credit and I can get a credit card. So now we're looking at, I got a $50,000 line of credit and I got a $25,000 credit card from one bank, and that was 75,000 that I can use in total. And you can strategically use, I'm using the 0% here, I'm using my line of credit here, right? That's a gem that I just shared. That like I said, I paid handsomely for it, but you guys are rocking with me, and I want to be able to share it with you, right? So let me know if that's making sense, right? So yep, yep, yep. So Monty said that you need to change your address. I think you do need to change your address. I want you to do that test though, Monty, to see if you put that address, and when you go into Google and go and look up USPS zip code lookup, go to that site and then put in the address that you have and see how it shows up. If it's a Staples, it probably is a CMRA, right? But look at it and see what that line item says. Tell me if you can do it real quick and tell me about it. But see what that line item says. If it says CMRA and Y next to it, then that's an issue. Now, one trick that I want to share, if you do use these, and I have a feeling that my friend that used the Opus address and was having issues opening their business in the state of Maryland, I have a feeling that if they had done this strategy where they register the business only with the suite number that they received instead of with the full address line that they received from the company. What is the full address line? Well, typically they're going to put your address 123 Main Street, Suite 300, and it's going to say something like Box 1005, right? Or PMB 1005, right? And then the city, state, zip. If you put that PMB or that box number in your business filing, like with the IRS, your business filing with the state, all that other stuff, that is going to indicate on paper that this is a post mailbox. If you do the opposite and say, I'm only including the suite. So when I file with Dun & Bradstreet, when I file with these different things, I'm only going to put 123 Main Street, Suite 300. I'm not going to put PMB 1006. Now, Kyle, how's my mail going to get to me if I don't put my box number, right? In my experience, depending on who you're working with, if your business name is on the piece of mail, right, and the right suite number, and that mail arrives at that company's doorstep, they're going to know who you are, and they will still get the mail to you, whether that's a scan or whether that's something else, right? So there's still ways to do that, even if it's not labeled. So that to me is the safer way to go if you are going to use one of these virtual addresses, right? Instead of using that other strategy that I shared. But if you are going to use one of these virtual addresses, that's the safer way to go to be able to have your business look legit and presentable on paper as much as possible. Again, the way that the banks would like to see it, right? So please write those down. Those are pretty critical. Again, appreciate you guys' questions. Appreciate the follows. Again, if you're tapping in here, I want you to hit the like button. I want you to share this with somebody. I am energized, even though it's late where I am, energized to be able to share this information with you, right? Like I said, like and share. Make sure you go to fundingmyfuture.net, because the most important thing you can do is to book a consultation call with a team. It is a free call. You're going to get value. You're going to get information, and you're going to get the next steps for exactly what you need to do. Is this something in your credit that needs to be fixed and optimized that you might as well just get the ball rolling on today? Or are you all the way ready and you just need to be talking about what's my next step to get funded? So again, fundingmyfuture.net, go in there and get a call booked, right? So I see Queen Sun says, why can't a car be bought with a credit card? Let me know what you mean by that. Did I say that a car can't be bought with a credit card? Right. So you could do it if you just have the funds to be able to just do it straight out. Right. Um, and let me know exactly what you're talking about before I answer that question. Right. Because if I've got money, like I said, even if the place is like, okay, we can't take that, you could liquidate the funds and be able to just purchase it. Right. So that's the other way to do pretty much anything is you can liquidate the funds off of the cards and then use it for whatever you want to use it for. Other times there's ways to pay directly, right? If you're doing like some sort of loan or something like that, or it's a down payment, typically people don't want you to use credit cards for that sort of thing, right? Because now it's like debt on top of debt. So there are some companies like Plastique and Melio and things like that where you can use the card to send an ACH payment to a particular entity or to send a wire transfer to a particular entity. They charge you the regular, rate for that on the card processing fee. And there are ways to do stuff like that, right? However, there are limits, a lot of limits to that as well. Because again, it's like people are very mindful of what you use that for because you're getting points. There's a cost to it to somebody, to use those cards and things like that. So let me know, Queen Sun, if you can clarify that, right? So MD says, I just got some trade lines to hit on your VIN, got a $50,000 Experian and a $15,000 SBFE. That's dope. That's dope. Again, depending on what is your goal with that. What's your goal? So if you have a clear map to say, when I build up my business credit scores, I'm going to tackle these types of loans or these types of products. Cool. Like I said, the thing that we're talking about tonight, even though our team can help with all the above, but I'm sharing with you the power of being able to leverage the 0% interest business credit, right? Some of that stuff may not even apply at all. What we're talking about is that personal credit profile and this business entity structure, like we're talking about. And I'm going to go on to the next points, but I do want to get to the rest of the questions, right? So let's see. Yep. So MD said you got everything paid down to less than 10,000 each business, and business credit, got the business owner's credit. Yep, business age. Okay. Yep. Yeah. And Monty, you said we got a lot of work to do. Hey, that's good. As having work to do is nice when you at least know what the work is that you need to do and you know where the finish line is, which is again why I suggest make sure you get a consultation with the team, because once you have that, then you have the whole map laid out to say, for my exact situation, these are the next steps. Even if it is some work, at least I know what the work is and I know that there's a finish line and I know I'm being guided along the way, so I don't have to do any guesswork. Take all the guesswork out of it. I'm being guided along the way to know like exactly what this needs to turn into, right? And then we buckle down and do the work, right? Because again, this is life-changing stuff, right? A lot of people do not get into their first real estate deal. They don't get into their first truck. They don't get, because they don't have the $30,000 that they need to save up in order to start that. They don't have the 20,000. They don't have the 50,000. It takes a long time to build up. And we're saying that potentially, if we can get you access to 120, 150, 100,000, or if you leverage a spouse or business partner, use the right strategy with the LOCs and all the stuff I've been sharing, you can double that up. And that's 300,000, 400,000. That opens things up considerably to be able to say, okay, maybe my first real estate deal, and maybe that could change the trajectory of your life. Or maybe my first high ticket mentorship, to where I know this person has the sauce to be able to share with me, to give me exactly what I need to do to move forward in business and to make the right moves and to connect with the right people and to avoid the right mistakes. That could be your first high ticket mentorship coming from that business credit. And now what does that open up? Right. So again, this is very, very powerful stuff, right? So Detroit says, I can attest to that. And you should only post the suite. Yep, definitely post the suite number on the on your virtual address if you decide to use one. Like I said, the team can walk you through what this new setup is, where if we need to, we might be able to get more out of it if we actually leverage the home address for this phase, right? It can be a strategic move to do that. But if you're going to do it, then keep going. You said, do I have a class, Monty? Yeah, you can DM me if you want to know more about the classes that I offer. I've been going live here, sharing the information. If you want to know more, you can DM me. But like I said, the most important thing to do, that's like execution related is you're going to book a call with the team, right? Because now that's looking at your exact situation to say like, what's the next thing that I need for me in particular. If you're interested in the community, I'm going to be dropping a community where we can talk about this stuff and interact, like-minded people and things like that. You can DM me and express your interest in that. But for now, like I said, to get you moving forward on execution wise, like this is what I need to do. I suggest you book a call with the team fundingmyfuture.net or hit the link in my bio. That'll take you to the same place. And you're going to hit the little button on there. And it's just like a 90 seconds to fill out the basic information. And then you'll get a chance to choose a call time, book a slot with one of the either the funding advisor or a credit advisor, depending on what your next step is. But either way, you're going to get mapped out. This is what I need to do. All right. Most important thing I can share. So let's keep going. I appreciate you guys tapping in and communicating this evening. So since you're trying to go to the dealership and grab at least 218 wheelers with corporate fleet financing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I say. If you're in the auto space and you need auto loans and things like that, then building up those business credit scores and things like that can be a significant stepping stone to be able to get that. And again, there are stories of people who have just built up my business credit, and then I was able to get a loan that was only on my EIN. It's a real possibility, right? But like I said, I don't want you to pass up on the power of being able to leverage these other angles too, and you can do both, right? So if you're building up, being intentional about building up your business credit scores in order to tackle that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, you might as well build up, okay, what do I need to do to be able to access these 0% cards too? Because if you use it strategically, it's like, I use this for this, use this for that. These credit cards also have rewards points and things like that too. So if you can leverage that properly, typically line of credit, term loans and all these other things, there's no rewards, anything. It's just, you just have, the money to be able to do what you need to do. So strategically, if you can leverage these, it can make a lot of sense. All right. So again, if you're getting value from this, please hit the like button. Just keep smashing it. Let the algorithm know that this is something that's good. We've been going deep tonight. We went a few different places. I always appreciate the questions to kind of open up the conversation a bit. But please share this with somebody that needs to hear it, so that we can get this information out. Again, my goal would be that everybody knows what they need to be set up for this, because it is a formula. When you have the formula in place, you can get access to it, right? And how you access it and how much you access is going to probably vary depending on who you decide to work with or different things like that. However, you can take what I have given you tonight and run with it. That's the access point. I want everybody to be able to do that. So ideally, you can push yourself, your life, your business forward to the point where you can get that freedom financially and otherwise. And then you can just be operating in your God-given gifts and purpose and whatever value you have to bring to the world. And you can be focused on that without having to worry about money. That's to me, that's the dream. Right. So I appreciate you guys for tapping in, again, for asking the questions. And I'm going to keep scrolling through here and let's see if we can, get this wrapped up nicely with any other question. I'm going to finish out the LLC entity structure, just a few more points. Right. So MD said you did a full consultation and you're going to need help with the credit stacking up the credit cards. Yeah. And that's exactly what we can help with. Right. Because again, if you're doing that stacking method, it is very nuanced and the sequence matters and things like that. So it makes a lot of sense to work with a team on that so that you can get the specific, like you just take all the guesswork out and all that extra legwork too. Right. So Queen Sun, yeah, thanks for the gifts and the shares. Definitely appreciate it. Right. So again, any more questions that you have, put them in the chat. Let's keep this rolling until we land this plane. Right. So next is we talked about the business address, right? Business address is super important. I gave you those nuggets on how to check your address. The new thing that's working, with the dual LLC strategy, or at least the dual strategy within one LLC where we're leveraging the DBA differently. You know what I mean? And this means you're going to end up with two websites. We're going to get to websites second, but so next, the most important is everything needs to match across all your information sources, right? This means the way that your business name and address email, everything shows up on when you submit to the IRS, when you submit to the state filing, when you open your bank account, when you um, do your Dun and Bradstreet number. All that information needs to match exactly. Why is that? If there's any difference, even if there's a period, people run into issues where I've got, keyword LLC, and on one business thing, it's got L.C. and another one, it's just got LLC. Those can show up as two completely different businesses, because when the computer is looking at this, there it gets confused to know, like, okay, well, which business is this if it's not exactly the same, right? And you'd be surprised. This seems like a really small thing. You'd be surprised how impactful this is when it comes to getting funding, or getting denials, or getting low limit approvals, or things like that, right? So again, we're talking about what factors you need to maximize your results, maximize the results, right? So everything needs to match across everything as much as possible. And again, if you have that started, you're just gonna have to take the time and do the work to get everything lined up properly, right? And again, please, I encourage you to do it under the consultation and the guidance of the team, so you don't have to do the guesswork and do something and then have to undo it later. Even though I've shared a lot, there's a lot that we were not able to go over because of the time constraints here. So I would want you to have your situation looked at, your profile looked at, your goals looked at, so you can say, okay, this is exactly what I need to do, right? So we got all that. So once everything is you have your business address, you have your name, those are checked out. Now you're actually ready, in a good position to either open your LLC if you haven't yet, right? So then once you do that, we can also have a business phone number, right? This is all a part of the matching information that we want to have, right? Business phone number. And this, we want something dedicated. If you can do toll free, that's great. You can get this type of funding on a like a non-toll free or local number, even like a Google Voice. But if you do want to get, like MD was talking about, I want to get these, equipment financing and different things like that. You want to be as legit as possible with this stuff. So I can get a toll-free number. You can do Grasshopper or something like that. Get a dedicated business line and make sure that's solid, right? Now, next is a business website and a domain-based email address. With a business website, you want to be generic and simple. Don't go crazy. You have a landing page that looks clean. It's got some stock photos that look good. It's got the business name, right, that we checked is all good to go, and generic, right? It's got the business logo, right? It's got a business address on there. It's got a your phone number, the business phone number. All that information is there, so it's like clear to see. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can literally go to Fiverr.com, have somebody make it for you tonight, pretty much in 20 minutes for $20, right? Or you can do these AI tools. So like GoDaddy, if you got your domain on GoDaddy, they have an AI builder, and you can just put a site together that's generic and simple and gets the job done, right? Now, once you have that domain, you also need a domain-based email address, right? Don't do Gmail, don't do Yahoo. We want it to be as legit as possible. Again, this matters a little bit less if you're only doing 0%, right? Because again, that your personal profile is so important as far as what you're able to leverage and access, right? But once you start getting into these other products and things like that, that's when it starts to matter a bit more of how you have it set up and where you have it set up, right? So that a domain-based email address, info@such and such.com or Kyle@such and such.com, right? And that's an important one. So once you have that, if you got all those things ready and lined up, then you can open your LLC. And when you open your LLC and do all the different filings and different stuff like that, then now all the information can be lined up from the beginning, and you don't have to worry about it, right? That's the best way to go. If you don't have that, no worries. Now we can just do the work to make sure everything is lined up properly according to what we just talked about. All right. So next, so then you have your EIN, your estate filing, your operating agreement, solid, Dun and Bradstreet number. Again, you don't have to have a Paydex score or anything like that for the 0% funding that I'm talking about. But you having a Dun and Bradstreet number does kind of make it more official. You know what I mean? Even if there's no score reporting. The score does help, but you don't have to have it. So a business bank account, your bank account's the same thing. We talk a lot about leveraging relationships, something that some people don't do because it takes time to do. But when you open bank accounts with a bank and deposit money in there, you establish a relationship, and relationships matter. The more little connections that you have, you increase your internal bank rating, and that improves your chances of funding or improves your limits that you're going to get. It changes the game. And you have to know which banks that matters for and which banks it doesn't. Because there's some credit unions and banks where they don't care how many relationships you have. They're going to fund you for this amount, period. So you don't have to waste time doing it. Other banks are like super anal about that, where like they want you to have a personal checking, a personal savings, a business checking, business savings, a loan product or something else with them. The more of those things you have, merchant services, like PNC, for example, is like, hey, a merchant services can give you a good internal rating if you leverage that product and you've been using it, even more impactful sometimes than the credit profile that you bring, so it just kind of depends on the nuances. Right. So if you have those things set up, then that can be the best chance for you to move things forward. Now, last is let me make sure we got the questions in. So we said, with the AI cheat codes, give me the funds and the tools. Oh yeah, Fund Finder, right? So the AI cheat codes, that's the state that we're in right now, right? If you're able to leverage AI properly, right, and you know the access, again, this could come in the form of mentorship of people that are doing it regularly and on the cusp of it and know what to do with it. Are you able to pay for that mentorship to be able to leverage AI the right way? Or are you able to even just pay for the tools? There's a lot of different tools out there. Sometimes it adds up. And to be able to use business credit potentially for that at 0% interest is different than now I got to pull from my savings to figure that out. Right. I've seen different programs in AI, $1,000 to get this information, or 2,000, 5,000. And then it's a totally different ballgame when you can just, okay, I know this is a good investment. I know this is going to convert, and especially it's going to convert at a fast rate. You know what I mean? Like if I implement this is going to give me an ROI within 30 days, within 60 days, within 6 months. Because if we've got 0% interest for 12 to 18 months on these cards, and we can leverage that strategy properly, then that makes a whole lot of sense. Right. And now that could open everything up. And again, if you do not qualify for this right now, I got to stress this again, is that you don't have to wait. I want you to start now to put yourself in position so you can access this at some point in the future. Start now, right? No matter where you are. However, while you wait and while you build, you can still leverage a credit partner, somebody that has the credit profile, they're sitting on it, and they can get funded, and you guys can work together on what the funds go towards, right? So no matter where you are, you can start today. The third thing you can do that I didn't mention before, third thing you can do is to be able to leverage the information, right? Leverage the information to move forward and say, I can refer people. Now that I know, Kyle, you gave me the blueprint for what things are needed in order for a person to be funded for this. So now I can start to refer people and get paid out along the way as an affiliate partner, right? On these deals. Case in point, I just the last payment that I sent to an affiliate partner, $2,252 for one referral that she made. She's very, very, very pregnant and not thinking about this stuff at all. She just had somebody that she could recommend, right? Submitted the name and she didn't lift another finger. And I sent her that amount. It was probably 30 days later. Sent her that amount. So imagine if you did that once a month or twice a month. You know what I mean? Just like, okay, one person that could be a good fit for this. That's something you can benefit from, right? So and I see on I got a comment. So he said, what if I'm 15? Right? What if I'm 15? So Paul, if you are 15, then this is this is what you're gonna do, right? Is you're gonna leverage exactly what I'm saying, is you can be referring people and getting paid out, right? For referrals. You can start now to be building up your credit profile, right? Because there's certain things you can access at the age of 15, at the age of 16 for these credit. If you get certain credit cards of certain limits, and you start to build that profile. So then by the time you're 16, 17, 18, you can be off to the races and like, I'm fully set up, right? And I can get for myself and for my business, I can get access to 100K, to 50K, to 150K to be able to like really, really launch in the right direction. That's a real possibility. The other thing is, what prevents you as a 15-year-old from having a credit partner who has aged credit that can get funding on their LLC for 100,000, 150,000. You know what I mean? And then be able to, now we work together. So the question, Paul, you have to ask yourself is, do I have the skill, the will, and the desire to do the work that it takes to be able to execute on the business? You know what I mean? If that's me and I'm willing and ready to do that work and put that work in, the funding is out there. So again, start now to build yourself up. And then at the same time, you can leverage a partner. And at the same time, you can be leveraging referrals to be able to get income. Right. So win, win, win. Right. And speaking of which, speaking of young entrepreneurs such as Paul, I shared before that a part of my desire is that everybody would be able to start the next generations would start with this information much earlier and be able to make their moves much sooner than we did. Right. So I have committed to dedicate a portion of my profit towards a fund that's going to be helping young entrepreneurs to get into business, to get into mentorships, to get into real estate, to get into wealth creation, financial literacy, all that stuff to be able to push forward. Right. So all that is very, very accessible. So there are some limitations, right, to different types of credit products and things you can get if you're under the age of 18. However, I just told you different ways that you can leverage this right now to be pushing forward while you build up what I need to build up on my personal credit. And if you understand that, this is like a financial literacy point. If you understand the power that you can get when you have just these simple things built into a credit profile, now you can start building up. Say, okay, well, now I need to make sure I have my credit cards of 5,000, of $10,000. Now, how do I get a credit card like that? You're going to build up your profile in a certain way to make sure you have enough accounts that you can get, like secured cards and pledge loans. And there's different things you can do to build your profile up. And then once you have that, then you can apply for your personal cards that have high limits, and you can target specific banks and credit unions that give out high limits. So you can have that as your starting point. And then once those cards age for about a year, now you're like really in business. Right. So what are some of those credit unions like Navy Federal, for example? There's a couple other ones that are known for giving high limits if you have a good relationship with them. So if you have checking account, savings account, if you have an auto loan, or if you have, some of these other things with them and that internal score, then they're much more likely to give you a higher limit on the personal card. And that could be a good foot to stand on as you launch towards the future. So let me know. I don't know if Paul is still on and watching, but definitely you can leverage this information right now in a bunch of different ways, right? So let's keep going. We're almost there. So we said you have a domain email and you have an up agreement checking account. Yep. Yep. Operation agreement checking account. Yep. Yeah. You're on the way for sure. Right. Your business account is with PNC. Yeah. So, Monty, if you haven't leveraged business credit with PNC, again, you can do these things on your own to say, okay, I've got this account and this. People do business credit where it's like the banks are going to offer this to you. When you open a checking account, business checking account, they're going to say, hey, do you want a business credit card? Because they want you to open the product, right? It can be cool to do that depending on the size of your goal. If your goals aren't that large with funding, you might as well just accept what they give you, right? The result is going to be different based on how you apply, how you prepare, and all these different things, which I would say just wait. Don't accept any business credit cards. Make sure it's a part of a whole stacking strategy so that way you can stack up to a whole lot. If you only need 15,000, 10,000, you know what I mean, 20,000, sometimes you can get that just from the banks that you have. And you can, just go for it. And sometimes you might get that approval. It could be 5,000 or 7,000. The results are going to vary a lot, you know what I mean? But just be mindful of that. But what I was talking about is with PNC is there merchant services, right? So you can get merchant services with some of these banks where you can process cards and things like that. And they charge you fees for each little thing that you do. But that is something that they value in their relationship meter, basically. So where if you have a merchant services account, then that gives you a good internal score. So that's something you can open up before you apply for the business credit, so that you're increasing your internal score, and then increases your approvals when it comes to business credit. Again, this is like serious game, you guys. I can't emphasize enough like that I've paid money for this. like I said, and I want to share this with you for free so that you can push things forward, right? So that's why I appreciate those of you that are asking questions and getting squeezing the value out of this. Like I said, it's it's late where I am. You know, I mean, I got things to do, but I appreciate this opportunity to be able to share this information with you because I believe it's so powerful and so impactful, right? So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys hitting the like button, sharing this with people. So and I appreciate you for pouring into yourself, even at this time of night, depending on where you are, pouring into yourself to be able to, push your life forward, basically, right? So Monty says, I need to be able to purchase and renovate homes, and that may be out of my reach at this point. But thank you so much and good night. Yeah. So out of your reach, out of your reach is an interesting term. It may or may not be to purchase and renovate homes. What kind of homes are we talking about? Because I just told you we can either use this to be able to leverage into, liquid cash purchases, right? So if we got 150K or 120K, and if you lined yourself up and you could be ready in the next 30 days, the next 60 days, the next 90 days, that's not out of your reach anymore. That totally changes the game for that, right? You can liquidate to be able to have a down payment to get with a hard money lender. So maybe you don't have the whole amount, but you got the down payment with the hard money lender, and then you're using the rest of your business credit to cover your construction costs along the way until you get your draws from the lender, right? So again, this is like a more deeper real estate stuff, but you can use the business credit. Now this is totally within your realm. This like opens the door like immediately. Again, this is why this is so powerful. It opens the door right away. And if we're saying you could be 30 days away from that, that's a totally different ball game. Right. But I appreciate you, Monty, for tapping in this evening. And let's continue to stay in touch. I assume you got to get some rest wherever you're at, but hopefully this was valuable for you to get this information. But like I said, this is something you can access right now. That changes the whole thing. The other thing is, depending on the deal that you have, that 100,000 that you got, that 150,000, 80,000, maybe some of it is leveraged towards mentorship. So you can get the right contacts, the right network, the right, you know, tools and things like that to know like how to execute this properly. The rest of it could be towards a whole deal, depending on the market that you're doing. Again, the purchase price could be 20,000 or 30,000 or 40,000. The renovation could be another 50, right? And you're going to be able to sell it for 250,000, and maybe you make, once everything's back, you make 50,000 on that flip. That's all to the good, right? Because you didn't come out of pocket, because we used the bank's money to be able to actually do this, right? We did the renovations, we got all the points along the way. This is why this is really powerful for real estate people when you use it properly. But you benefit from all the points along the way, right? You don't have to come out of pocket. Your personal credit is still intact. Your personal credit scores are still solid. You still got hopefully some savings that you can leverage, you know what I mean, and some cushion and things like that. And once you pay this off, you use these business credit cards and things like that. Once you pay them off, now you can go for credit limit increases because you show that you managed it well. And if you've got a 30,000 or 35,000 or $40,000 card, the increase on that, ideally, you're going to be recommending or requesting 30% to 40% increase, 20 to 40% increase, right? So now we're talking about instead of a $40,000 card, now you got a 50,000. Now you got a 52,000. You know what I mean? And that was in maybe 6 months. Now you can level that up across all of your cards. So that starts to add up very, very quickly, right? So this can be leveraged for real estate like right away. Like I said, it changes the game. And if you are not ready, but you do have the knowledge, the skill, the will to tackle real estate and do deals and do the work, or you know which mentor is like, okay, this is the person that can give me the exact things that I need. And if I can just get access to them, then I know I'd be good. And even if you're like Paul, who was 15 and says, okay, I can't necessarily get this myself, but you can get a credit partner, right? You can do referral deals until you build up the cash that you need to be able to pay directly if you're not getting that business credit for yourself. But there's so many different ways that you can do this. So Queen Sun says high utilization on personal credit cards. Best ways to reduce it. Ooh, I'm so glad you're still on. Let's talk about it. This stuff really does energize me. This is why I should be in the bed right now, but I'm just still here because I'm just so glad to share this information because it's so accessible to everybody, right? So Queen Sun, high utilization on personal cards, best ways to reduce it, right? The number one way is like a list, like a magic trick. We're just gonna shift it from one spot to another, right? So the utilization is based on your revolving credit card balances. So the first thing, if you're able to access it, and again, the team is going to be able to advise you on which options for this strategy are going to be best, right? Fundingmyfuture.net. Again, hit the little button on there, and 90 seconds later, you'll be booking a call with the team, right? And choosing a time slot. But high utilization. So your credit score is based on that personal revolving debt, right? So let's say I have my utilization, and Queen Sun, you can tell me what's the amount if we want to do like the actual math, but let's just say, again, let's say I have $10,000 balance on my personal credit cards and I'm using up most of my utilization and it's high. I can move this to another vehicle that does not factor in that personal revolving debt. And what is that? That's something like a personal loan or like an installment product where I'm paying the same amount monthly. So if I get a personal loan for $10,000, right? I didn't change my debt, I didn't change my budget, anything like that. And I pay off the credit cards go down to zero, right? My utilization goes down. Guess what happens to my credit score? Shoots way up immediately. As soon as those things report, credit score goes up. And I've still got the same debt on the personal loan, right? Two things that are going to happen. The first thing is, like I said, your credit score goes up, but you're going to be paying less on that anyway because your personal credit cards are probably 20 to 30% interest if you're lucky nowadays. The personal loan is probably going to have 15 to 18% interest on average, depending on your setup. So you're already going to be saving money. That's number one. But number two is if that was the only thing holding you back from this personal credit profile structure that I just shared, as far as like, okay, I've got multiple credit cards that are above 5,000 or above 3,000 or above 10,000. I've got low inquiries on my report. I've got more than 10 accounts on my credit report. My average age is above 4 years. I don't have any negatives, no late payments, no collections, no charge-offs, no bankruptcy. But my utilization is just the thing that's high. If that's the only thing that was holding you back, and you got that personal loan to pay off those cards, your credit score shot up. Guess what? Now you're ready for funding. You can get business credit, $100,000, $80,000, $50,000, $150,000, right? And then now I can take that business credit and either liquidate it or balance transfer it or do different things to be able to shift that personal loan, pay off the personal loan, and now that 10,000 is living on the business credit side, right? At 0% interest. So now I just went from 29% interest on the credit cards down to 15 to 18% and now down to 0% interest. So what is that? That looks like a lot of savings. That looks like cash flow. It looks like less interest money going into the bank, right? So now I've got the 10,000 over there. Okay, now I can breathe a little easier. Things are better, right? I got 100,000 left to be able to work with, right? 110,000 left to be able to work with. Now the question is, okay, what am I going to do with that 100,000 to be able to leverage towards new income in the next 6 months, in the next 3 months, ideally in the next 30 days, depending on what you're doing, right? If you set up your ebook funnel, that could be another thing. I got money to pay somebody to set up my whole funnel, right? I'm going to set up my funnel system. This is the information I'm going to share with people. I set up my whole course. Now you have the tools and the power to be able to pay people. You have to be able to do this right. You can't just go in willy-nilly and expect that the money's going to solve everything or every, a personal issue that you have or like, mental block or, your time management or like all that stuff has got to be tight. You can even invest in your personal development to make sure your personal development is on point so that you can actually execute on this stuff. But if you have that in place, you can access it. The funds are there and the funds open those doors again to virtual assistants to be able to free up your time or to make money while you're sleeping, to AI programs, to mentorships, right? All these different things that you can be able to open up now and you can do it at a high level. Again, ads, running ads. I'll just share this. There's a music artist called La Russell. He's a very like popular independent artist, and he's done a lot of things, funding things himself and things like that. And he shared a post where he did an ad campaign, and he paid $120,000 for this ad campaign. And this ad campaign reached 5.4 million people. Right? Guess how much he made off of that 5.4 million people? It almost doesn't matter because he made more than that 120,000, right? That he put up. But where do you get 120,000 from? Right? I'm not saying that you would just use the whole amount on that, but just think about that. If you had the right setup, you knew you had the right product, you knew you had the right offer, everything was just solid. It's just not enough people knew about it. If you could put $100,000 into an ad and know that you could reach 4 million people, 5 million people, and that was going to result in a certain number of sales that eclipse completely the amount that you put in, now that's playing the game at a totally different level, right? So Queen Sun, let me know if that answer makes sense, right? Let me know if that makes sense as far as the high utilization. So again, this converts things now from, okay, I'm in a bad spot. I'm not qualified. My credit score is low because my utilization is high. And now, oh shoot, I'm like one move away from being set up for getting access to funding. That one move, these personal loans, again, the ones that we connect with, it's like that could be 48 hours and those funds are in your account, right? And then you can be paying that off. And then as soon as those things report, which is going to be in the next 30 days at some point, you look at your credit card statements to see when is the reporting date for these credit card statements, right? So you can take a look at that. You pay those down. As soon as that gets paid down, your credit score goes up. And if that's the last thing that you were waiting on, you're off to the races, right? So let me know if that makes sense. If you have a way to just pay it down, then you just pay it down. You can also do this with like a HELOC if you have a HELOC on a house, because that balance is like a gray area sometimes where it shows up as a mortgage, even though it's technically a line of credit. And you can your score can still go up in that scenario, right? But ideally, like I said, that personal loan, debt consolidation loan, or something like that, to be able to move it off. If you know somebody with money that can just lend you the money temporarily, because if you say, okay, look, I'm about to, if I do this and clear this up, and I can get access to 100K in business credit, then I can pay you back from the business credit. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing possibly as well. And you can know reasonably within 45 days, within 60 days, like this process is going to go through. And I've already checked all the rest of the boxes. My personal profile, I know that's solid. I could do that. You could potentially do that. But these personal loans are very accessible depending on your situation. All right. So hopefully that was helpful, right? So you said, yep, it's like refinancing. It's like refinancing. Yep, we're playing chess, Queen Sun. We're playing chess and not checkers. 1,000%. 1,000%. Right. And again, you're playing chess when you know these strategies, like these little nuances and things like that. And it's a lot to know, which is why again I say if you connect with the team, that's the best way. That's the best way to position yourself to be able to maximize on this and reduce all the guesswork. So again, I want you to go to fundingmyfuture.net, click the little link, and put your information in there. It takes about 90 seconds, and get a call book with the team. And that's going to reduce your mistakes, right? DAF, thanks for the info. Have a good night. You have a good night as well. Yep, you have a good night as well. So I'm gonna, like I said, we went through it. I think there's one more thing I to share just to finish it out. Right? Oh my goodness. One more thing I got to share just to finish this out. And this is the ending part of the business entity structure. We talked about all this stuff, right? The name, we talked about the address, the phone number, the website, right? But your online presence needs to be solid as well. All right. Again, we're landing the plane here. So if this has been valuable for you, again, hit the like button. Make sure you follow me, but keep hitting that like button. Who knows, we might cross 10,000, from our first time this evening. But keep hitting that like button and share this with somebody too. Maybe we'll just get these last little nuggets in, right? So the online business presence needs to be solid. If somebody Googles your business, does it show up? It's like a very basic thing, right? But if it doesn't show up, they don't know who you are, they can't verify that, then that's much less likely that you're going to get approved. If it does show up, then this is like the computers or whoever's looking at this briefly and said, this looks like a legit thing, right? If you're there, then that's where you're moving things forward. So what does that mean? Is your Google, you can submit your information to Google My Business so that your business shows up in Google, right? The Google panel and things like that. You can submit your information to those things, right? So the next is, does it show up on Yelp? You can submit your information to Yelp, have it there. You can have some friends and colleagues to give you some reviews on there, even better, right? More legit. And then you got more SEO, you got more places that you're showing up instead of just you're saying that you're in business, but you got no website. There's nobody can contact you. What kind of business is this? Right. So that's the other thing. Bing, submit your information to Bing so that you show up in the Bing results. On 411, you can go to listyourself.net, write that down, listyourself.net, and submit your information to the 411 database, right? You can pay a little bit more and get access to the national database, or you can do the local one, right? But all these things, it seems like small things, but all these things added up, combined to like a very fundable entity, because again, it looks like it's going to stick around for a while, and the banks love stability, security. If it seems secure, then they want to get into it, right? So that is the blueprint, right? The two pillars are your personal credit profile, not just the score, the personal credit profile, and the business entity structure. Hey, there we go. 10K, 10,000 likes. Appreciate you guys. This is we've made history tonight. 10,000 likes, right? Thank you guys so much. And we're still pushing forward, but again, I do appreciate this opportunity to be able to share this information. I think it's very powerful. Like I said, it's very accessible. It's something you can do. It's something you can leverage now in multiple ways. Yep. Queen Sun, let's go. Let's go. I got to figure out a way to celebrate without waking up my family in the house. Right. So the quiet celebration. But yeah, but thank you so much. Thank you so much. But yeah, I do appreciate this opportunity to share the information. As I mentioned before, is I love win-win-win scenarios, and I believe in like abundance and that there's enough to go around, and part of that, what that looks like for me is I want the next generation to be equipped, fully equipped, to move forward, to be educated, like way faster than we were. And so I've dedicated and committed to donate and reinvest a portion of my profits towards a fund that's going to be helping young entrepreneurs get into business, get into real estate, get into trucking, get into investments, get into financial literacy, wealth building, so that the whole generational wealth landscape can change, right? And ideally, when we use these tools to be able to fast track towards success, and success in business really means adding value to the world, changing people's lives for the better, right? If you're doing it right, changing people's lives for the better, and the world just becomes a better place. And then once you get to that place, then it's much easier to focus even more on purpose, right? On my God-given gifts, on what am I doing, my legacy, you know what I mean? Like, how am I enjoying life? Like, what am I creating? Like all that stuff can be, supported once you push yourself into a place of freedom, right? So I want you guys to take this information, run with it. Queen Sun, definitely appreciate you. Definitely appreciate you. And you have a good night. Looking forward to connecting again later. I hope you have booked a call with the team. But thank you so much. And thanks for helping me to get over that 10K mark, first time in history. So we're definitely pushing in the right direction. So much love to you guys. I'm gonna stop it here, and we'll see you guys next time around. Peace.